So I sat down the other day to look at some comments on some gun debate stuff on Facebook. And I saw that a lot of the analogies going around were comparing guns to other forms of property, uh, in particular cars. And this makes a lot of sense because, of course, guns are property. They're not really different in that regard than anything else you own, including your TV or your car or your lawnmower or whatever. It's just it's just a piece of property that you use for a given task. Uh, the anti-gun people almost always discredit this analogy, and what they'll end up saying is that well, guns are just used for killing. They're just used for harm. They're just used for killing people, for killing animals, and so forth. Whereas cars have all these other uses. You use cars to get to work, use cars to pick up your kids, use cars to get your groceries, all these things, right? So they immediately dismiss the argument because you can't use a gun to pick up your groceries, which is fine. I don't think anyone's arguing that point. But with the recent headlines in the news and what our prime minister, or rather the prime minister, I'm not going to call him my prime minister, with what they're doing, I figured, what we need a direct analogy. We need something that actually fits what's going on right now. Because if you just said, there's a car accident, so ban all cars, like that doesn't really fit. That's not going far enough. So I sat down to write this out, and I just had to keep making it more ridiculous because I realized just how ridiculous a violation of property rights this gun ban is. So here's the headline I came up with. This is my satire headline. Stolen F1 car used in terror attack. Trudeau bans 1,500 makes and models of legally owned cars in response. And let me break down why I decided to write it this way. It has to be a stolen car, right? It's not just any old car commits a terror act or does some harm to someone. It has to be a stolen car because this recent shooting in Nova Scotia, and again, tragic. No one's debating that that's tragic and that we don't want more of those. That's part of the debate here. The guy used illegally acquired weapons. He's not using a weapon that he bought, illegally from a gun shop. He's not using something he legally acquired. So the only, what's the analog in the car world? The analog is that you steal the car. It has to be a stolen car. How else can you illegally acquire a car, right? So that's the only way it fits. Stolen F1 car. It's got to be an F1 car. It has to be, because it has to be something that's not legal to have on the street. If you're going to use a car that's not legal on the street for a terror attack, what do you really have? Most cars are illegal to be on the street most of the time, right? An F1 car is not street legal, so it has to be an F1 car, because you can't just walk down the sidewalk in your local downtown with a gun on your shoulder. That's just how it is all the time, right? We can't just walk through public spaces with a gun slung over your shoulder. So it has to be something that is illegal to have in that space that you're committing the crime. And the best analogy I can think of there is an F1 car, because you're just not supposed to have it on a street. In response, Trudeau bans 1,500 makes and models of legally owned cars. That is exactly analogous to what's gone on. If someone commits an act of terror or a mass shooting like this most recent one, and they use something they acquired illegally, and that thing is not allowed in that space in the first place, and then proceeds to ban things that are legally allowed for the use you've designated, and you're banning them from law-abiding citizens owning them. That's how ridiculous this is. This is an F1 car driving through a crowd of people and mowing them down and killing a bunch of people. And in response, the government decides to, let's ban Honda Civics. Let's ban Toyota Corollas. Let's ban anything with a tailpipe diameter of a certain size. Let's ban anything with hood ornaments. Let's ban, you just pick arbitrary things. Red cars. Red is a threatening color, so we don't like that. You can't have red cars anymore. And I want to bring that home to people. I'm not a gun owner, and I don't think I think people that aren't gun owners can't really can't really conceive what this probably feels like. But I mean, if I had to look out into my driveway right now and look at the car I've had all these good times with, all these good memories with, I use it safely all the time. I use it for recreational stuff. Um, I use it the way I want, and I purchased it with my own money from my own hard work. And if I thought that the government was coming to tow that away right now for a crime that I hadn't committed, that for a crime that I'm not going to commit, for a crime that has nothing to do with the fact that I own this car, how would I feel? How would any non-gun owner feel? I think that's the way we need to make the analogy with this, just because it's so outlandish, it's so ridiculous. Um, and a lot of the thing that gets brought up with this analogy is that, well, the guns are responsible for a certain number of deaths per 100,000 in Canada, and so are cars. And people will try to make this a direct analogy, but the reality is that cars are more deadly per 100,000 population in Canada than guns are. And the majority of the gun violence in Canada, the majority of deaths from gun violence, I should say, are suicides. So I don't see how that figures in. I mean, like, cars are by and far and away more deadly than guns in this regard. The only reason that people can make this argument and dismiss guns outright because of it is because you live every day with the risk of a car. Like, if you drive to work and you're 40 something, you've gotten in a car every day of your life for the last 30 some years, whatever, 20 some years, and driven to work. Every time you get into that car, you could crash that car. Someone could rear end you and your life could be over. And we just, like, every time you walk down the sidewalk, someone could sneeze and drive their car over the sidewalk and kill you. And we're just kind of accustomed to this because we live with it every single day. That's the only difference. Like, the guns are around us all the time too, but no one really sees them. So we don't think of the risk in the same way. But in order to make a good gun ban to car ban analogy, you really have to stretch this and make it absolutely ridiculous. And I think people need to think of it that way to really see what a violation of property rights this is. And whether you care about guns or not, or whether you approve of guns or not, you should care about the violation of property rights by your government without anyone having to vote on it. Like, that's just an icky thing. That's an icky thing. It's an authoritarian thing. And, if we're talking about things that cause harm, for sure, guns can cause harm. I believe there are more knife deaths and deaths from knife violence in Canada every year than from gun violence. So maybe we do knives next. And then what's next? Where does this stop? If we're just talking about things that cause harm, everything causes harm. You can die from just about anything. So where does it stop? And how far does this property rights violation go? So I think that's what we need to do with the analogy. I have a full write-up at conquesthp.com. I'll link that below for you guys. Hit like and subscribe if you like this video, and let me know if you want some more of this content, or feel free to leave your comments below and we can talk about it further because it's a fun discussion.